Keeping history alive is no easy feat. It requires diligence and a keen interest in the subject matter. The history of motorcycles, the machines themselves, and the socio-political landscapes that existed during each decade since we as a population moved beyond the horse for transportation is a fascinating study. Each small step towards building the two-wheeled transports we know and love today is a rich story on its own. When those stories combine, you have a compendium of ever-increasing speed, power, aesthetic, and community. As if the vehicle itself weren't fascinating enough, the communities we've built and the organizations that have kept this thing alive for well over 100 years becomes a subject of study in and of itself. Like any other subject in our world's history, we can do ourselves a great benefit to make a deep dive into these subjects. A cursory look at anything in our collective past will only show you a narrative put together by the winners of the wars, painting a landscape as the victors would have you believe it to be, not necessarily as it actually was. Thankfully, we have subject matter experts within the motorcycling community who have taken it upon themselves to learn the real truth behind it all.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in to The Next Story. I'm your host, Justin, and I'm here today with Neils Meersschaert. How you doing today, Niels?
Hi, how are you?
Excellent. So we got you here today at the Motorcyclepedia in Newburgh, New York, and you have a podcast that is actually quite incredible. What's the name of your podcast?
It's Throttle and Roast.
Throttle and Roast? Mm-hmm. And so I gave it a good bit of study, and the parts that really stood out to me personally, you cover a lot of ground, which I love, going from safety gear and everything else. The parts that really stood out to me were your history elements. You're very, very well read and very well researched on everything. And I was hoping you might be able to talk to me a little bit about some of the history of motorcycling and how it came to be.
Sure, love to. Obviously for the podcast, I love to do a bit of research for each episode, just whatever springs to my mind of, hey, this would be an interesting topic, or sometimes a group of topics that I'll do in a few different episodes. But that was sort of in the winter months. And of course, here in the Northeast, it gets a little cold and some of us aren't riding as often. Sure. I do still ride year round, but not everyone does. And it was a bit of a hard winter this year. I don't know if you experienced the same, but a lot of snow. It felt like every 3 days it was snowing.
Yeah,
so
just enough to get you thinking you're going to get out and do something.
Yeah.
And then it hits you again.
Yeah, you're just hoping for it to melt a little bit so that the roads are a little clear with the ice. But so it was like, okay, well, what do I talk about? Because normally I want to talk about all of the riding and stuff. And I said, well, let's talk a little bit about history, because I think whenever you're looking at where motorcycles are today, you always want to look at where they were and how that sort of journey has been for each of us. We get on our bikes, we go on a journey. Well, the motorcycle industry has been on a journey itself. And what's fascinating is it's really that sort of transfer from horses to bicycles and then obviously to motorcycles, and that transition of, well, what's the propulsion as we went through? So we had obviously horses in the beginning, and many of the same control aspects that we have in motorcycles today were first put on the horses. We've got the handlebars, well, that's the reins. You've got your stirrups, well, that's your foot pegs. Like the same premise still maintains from what we had on horses. Sure. Brought forward. And that's where the first bicycles sort of came to be.
Okay.
And so people were pedaling with the bicycles and trying to figure out how to make it a little bit more. And you had those ones with the giant wheel, and it was that giant wheel so that you could actually get some distance going, because obviously the gearing there was no chain or anything into it in the first parts. And then we got into the safety bicycle, like in the late, 1800s, which was where you really started to have it look like the bicycle we think of today.
With two more even-sized wheels.
Yeah, a little bit more even-sized wheels, a little bit more of the chain, and everything sort of fitting together. And if you think of that, that's really where we got into the first motorcycles. And first ones, certainly in the United States, you've got Harley and Indian, were within a year or two of one another, where they first started around 1901, 1902 kind of time frame. And we're surrounded here, of course, by a ton of the old Indians from 1901 up to 1953 of the first series. But if you look at those first models, they look exactly like a bicycle.
Sure.
They were just a bicycle, and they said, okay, well, we'll just stick an engine in the middle to kind of power it instead of you cranking the wheels. And that was that beginning of it. And there were maybe 1-2 horsepower in the beginning.
And there's the references to horses again there, the horsepower.
So it's always coming back into it. But this is sort of that journey into there. And and people then started getting into racing, and obviously Indian Motorcycle was really big into racing. Harley became into that later, but that journey was all about trying to get faster and faster. And that turn of the century with where we were starting to use that internal combustion engine was really that manifestation. And I probably jumped a little far ahead because we actually did try a couple of others. We tried like steam engines in the beginning with it too.
I saw that, yeah.
But they were a little bulky to kind of try to fit onto this.
One thing I was reading was that they were also not as reliable for starting and then maintaining.
They're great for like in a train where you just want to have a constant sort of, or in an industrial use where you just want a constant velocity. But if you're going up and down as you would for a vehicle.
Now, and wasn't this a lot of it in Europe as well? Places like France and Italy?
Well, I mean, obviously, if you think of, for Mercedes, the original founders of Mercedes.
Carl Benz?
Yeah, Carl Benz actually built a prototype. It was actually a almost like a prototype horse, if you will, to kind of just test out an engine idea, but they made a motorcycle out of it. Couldn't steer or anything like that, so you would just kind of go along, but it was able to prove out the premise of, hey, is this able to actually create propulsion and move a vehicle forward?
Okay.
So there's just been that sort of interesting journey of as you got into there, and of course, the first couple bikes were usually single cylinder because it was mechanically simple, and then we got into multi-cylinder, usually the twins, and certainly for Harley and Indian, the V-twin became that first beginning. So
one thing that I was reading was saying where I think it was Indian had the forward lean when it was a single cylinder, and Harley had a back lean, or maybe I have that backwards.
I don't remember if that specific case. I mean, the problem is in the first early years there was so much experimentation
and little documentation.
And exactly. So it was just sort of like, well, they tried it this way and then they tried another, and it was constantly flipping around each year. So you didn't necessarily have that consistency that we today have of a model year. It was like, let's just make a running change, and they would change it as they were kind of coming along.
Oh, sure, yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. One thing that I saw that I thought was a little surprising was even before they put the pedals on the bicycle, they were calling it a hobby horse, and it was basically somewhere to put your hands, two wheels, and a seat, and you would run along with it.
Yes, and so it was just and in fact, it couldn't steer either. So it was just literally that, and when you got to where you wanted to go, you'd lift it up and then change the direction. But it was just the beginnings, but it was still the same view of what you had of a horse, of you would straddle it. That's where this all came in, is we almost over-biased out of our index onto this is the mechanism by which you are going to transport yourself, is to straddle the vehicle.
Sure, okay.
And that's how it began. And so that hobby horse, and then eventually they got something where you could sort of steer a little bit with it.
Okay.
And then they said, okay, well, let's try to figure out how to make the mechanics a little bit better. And then you got into more of the chain and the belts to sort of provide that mechanical advantage.
Wow.
And then, of course, you put an engine in it and you do the same thing. So.
Yeah. Now, one thing I was reading was that a lot of they would do little races, 2 to 5 mile races, and anybody with, a steam-powered motorcycle or bike or whatever they were referring to them at the time, or the internal combustion engine. They had electric at the time as well. They were testing it with batteries and all different sorts of methods, but that it was the internal combustion engine was the one that just happened to be, it always started and it always finished.
Yeah.
Where a lot of them weren't able to do that, and so that helped to the popularity of the internal combustion.
No doubt, and I mean, one has to think of any time you're thinking of a power system for any sort of a vehicle, there's compromises, and so okay, well now I have to refine a fuel in order to be used with it. That's going to be versus a steam engine, which
easy to get.
It's a little bit easier. You can just use coal, and that's what you fire it with, and there was no refinement necessary for the fuel source, whereas with gasoline, of course, you had a little bit of a different world. So there's always trade-offs, but I think that's where we had from a power delivery system, it was so effective in that moment. And it was really a time of innovation. Everyone was just trying new things. They were trying different cylinder heads design. They were trying different layout of cylinders in there, just anything to try to make more power and improve it. And you start to see that, even if you just look through some of the bikes there and you look at the movement within a decade, you went from like 1 horsepower up to like 15. So it's a pretty radical 15x improvement in power in a few years' time. That first, before the World War II, there was a lot of innovation that was going on, and every subsequent year, more and more power and faster, and you got into all the racing that became a big part of it. And I mean, anytime someone puts an engine in something, they're like, let's see who can go faster. So there's that competition aspect. But
Sure. Yeah.
but that was a lot of the innovation. And I think what happened with World War II is because of a lot of the push towards making facilities and everything available for the war effort, there was a bit of a slowdown, and you couldn't produce as much stuff because you had to make those materials available for the war effort. So a lot of companies actually went under in that time period.
Oh, okay.
And that's why Indian, although they kind of soldiered on for a little bit, they kind of closed doors in 1953. And they were dying for a while beforehand. And basically what it was is Harley got a bit of a contract to provide bikes to the military, and that sort of kept them alive a bit. So it was just a hard time for a lot of the manufacturers.
Now, to my understanding, at least on the American side, you're right, Harley's contract with the U.S. military provided a lot of bikes, put a lot of soldiers in training to work on those bikes, and that's a lot of what happened then after the war, was you had a lot of these surplus bikes and a lot of these guys coming back that were trained and knowing how to work on them.
Yeah, they had enjoyed them. And then
Absolutely.
It was tinkering. That's where you got into a lot of the stealing bits off of it to make it go faster. And that's how you got into sort of the bobbers and stuff like that of that era, where it was just like, bob things off of it because any weight that you don't need is going to make the bike go faster. And the same era happened in Europe with the.
I was just going to ask about
with
that.
the cafe racers.
Okay.
Sort of was a little bit later because that was more in like the 60s era, but
Okay.
It was the same premise. It was like, we had these now fast motorways, and let's see how fast we can get from one cafe to the next one. And the Ace Cafe London is right at this intersection with a bunch of different roads that lead off of it, so it's a perfect jumping off point.
So there was actually a good reason for them to be called cafe racers.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a name thrown out there.
No, it was literally like run from one cafe to the next and see how fast you can get there, and then maybe have a coffee or a tea or whatever to re-energize yourself after such an intense run.
Wow, okay.
I mean, and if you've ever ridden like an older bike, they're not quite as up there as modern standards. So I have a 1972 R75, a BMW.
Okay.
So when it was new, it maybe had 50 horsepower.
Okay.
Right? It's all carbureted. It's cable actuated drum brakes front and rear. So it's more of a suggestion to slow down than an actual like command. And so if you think of that, and the people who were riding bikes of that vintage were very similar to that, because that's 1972. Bikes were in the 60s were the same thing. It was all drum brakes. And they were trying to get up to doing the ton, 100 miles an hour, on these bikes that you were full, wide open throttle to get to 100. And it was a little bit of a scary thing. The bearings weren't perfect, things shaking and wobbling. So
Sure.
not quite today when you get on a bike and it's like, I'll do 60 in first gear.
Oh, right. Now, we all know the big four Japanese manufacturers for the bikes, being Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, Kawasaki. Where did they come in to the entire scheme of motorcycling?
So Honda was originally, Ishiro Honda was actually a engineer and had been working on building engines for another company, and then decided to sort of build his own, and that's kind of where it came into.
Oh, wow.
If you think of just post-World War II, a lot of the rebuilding, it was like, okay, well, we needed some transportation, and started to innovate on there, started building some bikes for the domestic market, and then started to realize, hey, this actually could work around the globe. Motorcycles were a cheap form of transportation, and that's where it sort of began to manifest. And then I think that the hard thing is in the United States, and I realize we're probably very focused on a U.S. audience for the show,
Sure,
but we tend here to ride bikes for fun, not for commuting.
Okay.
And it's a different purpose that you have when you're focused on that. You're not looking for cheap transportation, you're just looking for something that's fun and maybe looks beautiful, maybe there's a lot of overwhelming amount of power than you actually need. But that's sort of our focus here, whereas a lot of the rest of the world was looking at it as a more cost-effective way to transport themselves. So they didn't care about it having 100 horsepower. They didn't care if it had 20 horsepower. It was like, well, it still gets me to my job.
Yeah.
And so that was the beauty of what Honda and many of the Japanese makers did, is they really focused on that small, effective, efficient vehicle, and were able to do that. Now, they did still tinker. They still got into racing and everything, as everybody goes and gets into racing at some point. But it was still from that starting point of, we're building a bike that is practical versus one that's just beautiful or fun.
Yeah. Excellent. Now, swinging back to the U.S. side of things, we know Harley had hit some hard times with the building, and a lot of that was the competition from those lower priced and faster Japanese motorcycles coming in. And then there was the illustrious AMF years of Harley Davidson that kind of put a stain, an oil stain on the name there for a while. But as I had learned last year, that what Harley had to thank AMF for out of that was the manufacturing process and being able to actually put Harley from a point of every bike kind of being built by one guy to having a full manufacturing process to get the bikes lining out like that.
Yeah, I mean, but it didn't happen immediately. No. That was sort of a bit of a delay on there. And to be honest, a lot of the early AMF bikes, you have to think of, in the time period, the reason why they were acquired by AMF was Harley was not doing great.
Sure.
The bikes were pretty poorly made, they weren't selling as much, and they were starting to run into financial worries, and thus they were acquired by it. And they still maintained that for a while in the AMF years, and it almost might function, was the way some people sort of refer to the old AMF bikes, as like, yeah, maybe. But it was that era. But they did, I think what happened was also, and it's apropos to what's happened in recent weeks here with the tariffs, is they did actually go to the International Trade Commission in the United States and ask for tariffs against Japanese bikes.
Oh, right.
And eventually they got them, but they were actually granted against all bikes, which is not what they'd asked for, but they got that. And it wasn't really that much of a competition, to be honest, because Harley was mostly focused on larger capacity bikes. A lot of the Japanese makes were focused on the smaller capacity, like we just spoke about.
Okay.
But I think there was the impression of people realizing, well, maybe I don't need that big bike. So that was, I think, what was happening for it a little bit. And eventually, though, they were able to then start to retool and get their business processes effective, and then basically asked the government to, yeah, you can take the tariffs off, and we're all good now. You started to get from where there was the quote-unquote standard motorcycle, and then we started to get that splitting into these categories of bikes. Like, that was really what started to happen in the 70s and the 80s, was that sort of diversification, because a sport bike was just a regular bike in the early days. And then we started to add on all the body cladding as you were starting to get to higher speeds, but that wasn't in the very, very early days. But what Harley did a phenomenal job on is the bikes that they make today look like the bikes that they made in the 30s, 40s, 50s. And that aesthetic resonates with a lot of people. And that's what they love about it. And even the engine still being an air-cooled V-twin. Like, there are Harley fanatics who are like, I will not buy a water-cooled Harley. And it makes sense. They love that aesthetic, and then the rumble, the sound of it has that potato sound is part of it. But other bikes started to see other opportunities, and therefore you started to get some of those others. We talked about cafe racers as being that was kind of the original sport bike, if you will. It was strip it down as much as possible, put clip-ons so I get a little bit more hunched over so it can be faster aerodynamically. And then bikes started to come from the factory that way. So you started to see more of that splitting out. And then BMW, of course, in 1980 had the BMW GS, which was the first adventure bike, which of course globally today is the most popular category of motorcycles out.
I'm glad you segued right into that, because I was going to ask when the adventure bikes had come into play.
I mean, BMW started in 1980, so it's 45 years at this point. But they didn't really kind of pop and become super, super popular until, if you think of the Long Way Round, Long Way Down series, all the Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman films. That was the catalyst, and that was that around 2007, 8-ish generation of the R1200 GS.
Oh, wow,
was
okay.
that gen that I actually used the 1150 on the first one, but the 1200 on the second one.
I didn't realize it was that late that they started to really gain that much popularity.
Yeah, it was after the film, actually, quite honestly, is when
Wow.
it really popped. Because people thought it was silly. They were like, it's a dirt bike, but it weighs 500 and 600 pounds. Like, I can't really take it off-road. Like, people didn't know what to make of it. But then as people started to use them, they realized it's just a go-anywhere bike. It's an amazing touring bike, very comfortable. You can sit there for hours and hours and hours on the seat, and you're like, oh, it's a dirt road. Okay. Who cares? It doesn't make a difference.
Yeah. Welcome back. I'm your host, Justin. I'm here today with Tommy Gleason. Tommy is a retired City of Newburgh Police Department motor officer, and Tommy has some tips he wants to talk to us about with gear when it comes to riding.
Your average car now has airbags, crumple zones, and what do you have on your motorcycle? You have gear.
That's it.
You have gear. And it's important to have good gear. Helmets. Most people don't know helmets have a shelf life. Helmets have a shelf life of 5 years from the time of manufacture. The styrofoam breaks down.
Now, do you own stock in the motorcycle helmet manufacturing companies? Is that why you're telling me this?
It is not. It is just a fact. And if you look at a styrofoam cup, a lot of the helmets are made up with that styrofoam. Styrofoam breaks down eventually. It's compressed styrofoam. So you leave a cup out, eventually that thing is going to disintegrate.
Now, you mentioned leaving it out. Is there a benefit to not leaving your helmet
out?
Sitting out in the sun?
Take care of it, absolutely. Take care of your helmet like you take care of your motorcycle. It's protecting your head. You shouldn't drop a helmet. Helmets are good for one impact, all right? One impact, literally, if I drop my motorcycle helmet from here and it hits the ground, I don't want to hit that same spot in a bad accident now.
If I've got my helmet sitting on the kitchen table that's yay high, this high, whatever, and it knocks off.
If you treat your helmet properly, it'll protect you when necessary. But I know impacts, if you have a legit impact on your motorcycle, you crash on your motorcycle and you strike your helmet, it's time for a new helmet.
Now, aside from a helmet, what else is a good idea to have?
Full finger gloves. What do we do when we fall on the ground? Fall off anything, a bicycle, off your feet.
Put your hands out.
You put your hands out. So I love everyone riding around on with their fingers all out, but your fingers are going to be just toasted by the time they slide down the highway. So full finger gloves.
And Tommy, I see you've got a bright colored shirt here.
The bright colored shirt, the brighter the better. Be seen on your motorcycle. Leather is the best thing for you when you hit the pavement. It's going to protect your arms and legs from the road rash that is definitely coming if you're dressed like Justin and I here. You not want to slide around. Even the jeans are going to go through relatively quickly and you're going to lose skin. So chaps would be the ideal way to wear. If you really want safety, you put a leather jacket on, something this color, doesn't have to be a full shirt, but this color, in a vest, and you put chaps on. And if you hit the highway, trust me, you will be better off than anyone out there who you're riding with.
Now, aside from
no one's
chaps,
wearing all that.
Chaps get a little hot, but I know they make different aramid fiber, Kevlar fiber riding pants.
All the new gear they're coming out. I'm sure you can go online. They have the greatest new Kevlar. And like you said, everything breathes. It's got zippers everywhere. And being comfortable, you can get hot, people. We're sitting on top of an engine.
You got the heat coming up from the engine. So yeah, I've got a good pair of riding pants. They've actually even got slip-in spots for the knee pads. So you're not trapped in them like you are in some of the older designs. These ones you can actually slip in and out right there when you're done riding.
So comfortable. You stop and go to lunch. Yeah. You can walk normal.
Speaking of walking normal, footwear.
Over the ankle boots.
Okay.
Over the ankle boots for support. Everything is balanced on a motorcycle, getting on and off of it. If you have something that's going to allow your ankle to twist.
I'm a big fan of the slip-resistant soles as well.
100%.
How many times you get to that oil patch in the ground? You know, I mean, especially you're at a stoplight, Cars have been there for decades, just dripping stuff all over the road.
Exactly.
If you're not wearing a full face helmet, I know we need some kind of eye protection. That's law in most places anyways. I'm pretty sure all states have some kind of law for eye protection.
And if it's not a law and you're riding without glasses, well, the laws of nature will get ahead of you. You're going to get some in your eyeball and then you wish you had the glasses on.
We can't all be Mickey Rourke from that scene where he's riding along and I'm going, how are his eyelids not pulling back from his face right now?
Not to mention, the wind would make your eyes tear and you wouldn't be able to even see well on your motorcycle. Eye protection, so important. Something that wraps around a little bit like I'm wearing is usually a little better than an aviator type like you have. Anything that has a little wider side.
Oh, Tommy, I have made the mistake of wearing these while riding, and by the time I hit 50 miles per hour, I may as well not have had anything on.
Everything's getting around the size of those. You know, picture wind going around anything in a wind tunnel. It's going to go circular around just about everything. So it makes a difference. Motorcycling is getting very comfortable.
Yeah, for sure. All right, thank you, Tommy. Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the next story. I'm Justin, and I am here today in the inner sanctum of Tonus Maximus. Thank you so much for bringing me here today. I'm very, very excited to be able to have the opportunity to sit down and talk with you about everything that you got going on. Tell me what it is that you do. I know I caught one of your shows, but for those that don't know, because it's almost tough to explain, but maybe you can do a better job.
I think the best way to show what I do is just demonstrate it. So,
lovely.
That's mostly what I do, right there. But then when I'm not doing my main thing that I'm into, I do this.
See, and that is just magic right there.
Thanks.
I felt like seeing your show, it was very cabaret with an element of shtick that was very punk rock. You really touch on a lot of things that I feel really captured the heart of counterculture. But you did it in this way because of this cabaret vaudeville feel that you have, that is all done with a very twinkle of a smile, you know?
Right, kind of lighthearted.
Yeah, it's fantastic. How did you develop this? Where did this all come from?
It's a very sad story. My mother, she liked David Bowie, Adam Ant, Gary Newman, Devo. The Doors are the reason I started playing music.
Really?
Honestly, yeah. Like I became obsessed with the Doors when I was 17, back in the 1990s. I am the back door man. I am the back door man. Men don't know, but the little girls understand. The Doors did that one.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say, the first things that come to mind, it's kind of a reach, but Mr. Bungle.
Oh yeah.
Like three viewers will know who that is. But and like Ween. Yes. I think more people know Ween. But basically the Outsiders, just complete weirdos.
Yeah.
So they're my biggest influences still.
There's those that manage to make it big by going out there and trying to follow what the mainstream is looking for and do that. But then there's those that are the outliers, you know, that come out and make it by being other than what is expected and what is desired and what is wanted, and just saying to hell with it all. This is what I have, take it or leave it. I remember there was a song where you had a number and you had dancers there that were out collecting money, and you're making just these really intense social commentaries, but presenting it in such a vibrant, fun, lively motion while doing so.
Well, it's like everywhere I go, I see people doing people things, just the same people things. Nothing changes. War, deceit, and poverty, television, slavery, fashion, money, misery. Ooh, Oh, it's murder, racial hate and bigotry, television slavery, fashion, money, misery. Oh, it's murder. Then it gets really big and loud, but that just shows, yeah, so I always like wrote these like really direct, it was because I heard the Misfits. I mean, I turned into a Martian, and
Yeah.
that's the rest of my life is just like on that path now. He had like really dark lyrics, but the music was actually like kind of upbeat and like made you feel good.
When it comes to your music, I know I've seen you live. A lot of people in the Hudson Valley down into New York City have seen you live. But for viewers that we have that are far outside of our area, where can they see and hear some of what you got going on?
Tonus Maximus on YouTube.
Tonus Maximus on YouTube. Okay.
And I'm just calling it a podcast to sound like highfalutin, you know. It's like it's just a bunch of YouTube videos. But the main point to that is what it's like being highly creative and being a weirdo. Because I don't know if you've noticed, folks. I'm a weirdo. Oh yeah. I've always been a weirdo. I've tried to fit in. I'm still trying to fit in. It's not working. I'm hoping the biker community will take me in. Perhaps motorcycle culture.
Yeah.
I'll quit saying that.
It's adult counterculture where, you know,
Right,
skateboarders, we were the kid counterculture.
Yeah. And motorcycles, I mean, just way fucking cooler.
Yeah.
Like,
for sure.
I have to say, like, that's what the podcast is about. So everything I just said
Yeah. That's the podcast.
was actually an answer to a question.
I love it.
Amazing. No, basically it's about being a weirdo and not fitting in and just being an artist.
Do you have a name for the podcast itself?
It's called Tonus Maximus, the podcast.
Oh, who'd have thought?
That's brilliant.
You do a lot of streaming of live performances, basically.
Yeah.
And as far as I understand, we're in the studio.
Yes, we are in the studio.
So this is where you actually stream live performances from.
Yes.
That's absolutely awesome.
This is where the magic happens.
The inner sanctum.
But I've been like extremely creative my whole life. In fact, it's been a curse, you know?
Well, they say a creative mind is often a tortured mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And oh, let me tell you, folks. Oh, it's been awful. I've had such a hard life. Oh.
I see you with the stick with the tied up bag.
Oh, many
just
times.
walking along trying to find a home.
Many times. I am not tooting my own horn, but I play trumpet and trombone. Well, I'm trying to.
Well, whose horn is it that you're tooting? Then
That's why that keyboard's set up. Right now, I do have a band. I have a bassist, drummer, guitarist, and we do perform. But I'm mostly streaming concerts right now on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and sometimes Twitch.
There's nothing to me that's more wonderful than when people who are outside of the mainstream are able to be brought together by something like that. And it's just such a special feeling. You know? It's like the first time somebody introduces you to, like, you know, the Cramps, you know, and you're all like, it's done. You're sold, you know, forever after. You're always in that moment. You can always go back to that moment when you first heard it. You know?
Right, yeah. I think it's freedom that everybody wants, honestly.
It is.
I think it's just a feeling of freedom.
And we all have a different way of finding it, whether it be through music or motorcycles or whatever.
I was just going to say, is it not, I mean, I'm nowhere, I will never be cool enough to ride one. Also, I'm kind of scared. I wasn't going to bring that up, actually.
You know what? You're talking to the right person, because I actually teach motorcycle lessons. So.
Well, I know what we're doing for the next 6 hours.
There you go.
So, if we could just talk about my album now.
Let's talk about your album.
That's enough about me. Let's talk about my work.
So your album, you said, is a little more on the bluesy side, right?
Yeah.
You're focused on the blues element, right?
I wrote 11 songs that are very inspired by the Doors. I'm kind of laying into the psychedelic stuff on the Weird Road. It's very bluesy.
Well, thank you very much for having me here today, bringing me into the inner sanctum of Tonus Maximus. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm honored that you would even invite me.
No, this has been absolutely wonderful.
Thank you so much. I hope you're all doing well and have fun.
Thank you. Hello, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Next Story. I'm your host, Justin, and I'd like to read you another excerpt from my debut novel, I Almost Forgot to Kill You. Released October 1st, 2025. You can go to my website at twowheeltimetraveler.com to place your order, or go directly to Amazon. Here's a quick excerpt from the book. I wake up the next morning at sunrise. No one else appears to be out at this time, and I take advantage of the opportunity to leave without having to say goodbye to the old man. I pack my tent and quickly return to the open road. The air is pleasant and cool as it cuts over the top of the windshield, and for a moment I wish I could remove it altogether just to feel the wind against my face. As I cross the Oklahoma state line, the bike begins to sputter and the engine quits. Coasting to the side of the highway, I see I still have nearly a quarter tank of gasoline, and the electronics are working. I remove my helmet and set it down on the cement behind me, then pull out my toolkit and repair manual from the saddlebag. Before long, I hear the sound of an engine pulling up close behind me, and I look up to see a police officer on a motorcycle. "Engine troubles?" He offers a smile, but the sight of his pistol and tall black boots create an intimidating air of authority which conjures up memories of my last encounter with law enforcement. "I'm not entirely sure," I tell him. "It stalled out while I was riding." "I used to have a gold wing like this," he says, his approach slow and cautious as he scans my tools and my belt line. "Looks like this one has seen some miles." "I bought it used," I confess. "I'm still learning my way around all the cables." "It is a fully loaded bike, even an older model like this." His eyes scan the motorcycle now, stopping on the plate. "Nevada, huh? Where are you heading?" "New York." I offer as little information as possible while sticking to the truth. The less I need to embellish, the more likely I am to stay calm. I'm not sure how well a motorcycle officer in Oklahoma can determine a nervous disposition, but I'd like to minimize it wherever possible. "Do you have enough fuel?" I nod. "I was hoping to get to Oklahoma City." He turns and looks at me, popping a stick of gum into his mouth. His mirrored sunglasses reflect my face back at me as we listen to the whiz of cars driving by. A moment passes, then another. "Well, I could probably call a tow truck for you," he says, finally breaking the silence. "Or..." He goes right back to staring at me, and it's all I can do to keep my pulse from pounding in my neck. "I got an idea," he says so suddenly I almost jump. "Grab those tools. We're going to pop the radio panel off right quick." I do as he says, and 10 minutes later, we have full access to the carburetor. He pulls the fuel line from the vacuum pump, and I instantly realize what he's doing. "You're going to bypass the vacuum shutoff from the system," I say, and he nods. "That's right," he says with a smile. "I had the same problem once upon a time. I figure it's worth a shot." We juggle the fuel lines until the vacuum pump is eliminated, and the officer signals for me to start the bike. With a satisfying growl, the engine fires right up. "It isn't a permanent fix," he tells me, "but it'll get you into Oklahoma City. There's a repair shop on South Robinson, just outside of Bricktown. They're honest folk. They'll have you back on the road in no time." "Thank you." I can hear the surprise in my voice, and he offers me a friendly laugh. "That's what we're here for." He walks back to his police motor unit and swings a leg over. "I'll let you pull out first, just to make sure you don't have any issues getting on the road." Thank you for listening, and I'll see you again next episode.